We have an absolute treat for all of you here on the Sports Cubicle. I'm your host, Mike Mercado, and coming up, we have a person that not only myself, not only Paul Chivari, Devin Tingle look up to. He is somebody that if you are in journalism, if you are in sports radio, talk, anything from any form of the genre, this is somebody you looked up to. He was with the Chicago Tribune. He is a fixture of the Chicago Tribune for 40 years plus. He is an Indiana Football Hall of Famer. He's in the Gary Sports Hall of Fame. For God's sake, he has an award named after him for the Fred Mitchell Award. He is one of the best to ever do it. He is a legend. He is Fred Mitchell. Fred, thank you so much, sir, for joining us here on the Sports Cubicle.
Thank you, Mike. So good to see you again, and hope things are going well for you.
Everything is great, my friend. The Bears are currently 1-0. The Cubs are in a playoff run. And you know what? The weather has been nice. It seems like we're getting ourselves a last bit of summer. But let's before we get into the fun stuff of sports, I wanted to talk about this. You and I had the pleasure of first meeting. I had the pleasure of meeting you and getting a chance to knock that off my sports and media checklist to meet some of my idols. And we did it with the great Jerry Riles. Shout out to Jerry, who's doing some amazing stuff right now. He got everything up and running again with the Rewind Sports 60 doing Bears Post. Make sure you guys check that out. Shout out. We love Jerry, one of our mentors here. And we didn't get a chance because we were talking a lot of Bears at that point. For the youngsters, the people who are coming in now, who are watching us on YouTube, all over wherever they get their favorite podcasts, and of course on the radio, when I tell them that this is a legend, not just because he's a great journalist, not because he has great stories, he's talked to amazing people. When they hear that you have an award named after you, right away they think, oh yeah, that makes sense. I've read his stuff, I've heard him talk, and then they find out what it's for. And for all those who don't know, the award is the annual Fred Mitchell Award. I want to make this sure this is right for all the youngsters. Outstanding Place Kicker Award, also known as the Fred Mitchell Award, is provided to the nation's top collegiate place kicker among more than 750 FCS Division II, 3, NAIA and NJCAA football teams. How did that come to be? What is that like? What is that journey like to get to the point where they have an award named to you in America's second favorite sport?
Well, thank you very much, and certainly a huge honor for me to be the namesake of the award. And I was a place kicker in high school and college and semi-pro football. And it's always meant a whole lot to me to be able to participate and achieve on those levels. And then years later, after becoming a sports writer with the Chicago Tribune, I would attend some of the National Football Foundation luncheons that they would have, where they would honor student athletes, high school and college, and that sort of thing. And I had a conversation with Chris Carney, who's the head of the Chicago chapter of the National Football Foundation. And during the conversation, he knew that I had been a place kicker. And I mentioned to him that, I said, there's no national award for kickers other than the Lou Groza Award, which goes to the major college guys. But like we said, there's over 750 colleges that do not have any acknowledgement of the top kickers. And, just to quickly say that there are so many outstanding kickers who've come from smaller schools, including the NFL's all-time leading scorer, Adam Vinatieri, from South Dakota State, which is, I think it was Division II when he graduated. I think it might be FCS now. But there are any number of outstanding kickers and punters who come from smaller schools. So these people need to be acknowledged. So after that conversation, he and a couple other people in Chicago approached me and said, we would like to have this award and name it after you. And I was obviously taken aback and very appreciative. And not only because of the fact that it recognizes the most outstanding kicker among these colleges, but also a key component of the award is community service. So we have some young men who are not only outstanding kickers and athletes, but they also give back to their community, and that to me is so very important.
What is it about the kicker, and especially when they get to that level, from the top of the 12-team playoff all the way to when 50 people and it's only family are watching them in the small universities? What is it in a kicker that allows them to be a community man, a community person, be out there, be part of the people, and then have ice in their vein when they have a stadium full of people cheering against them, or if they're having themselves just a bad streak of 3-4 kicks, or they're on a hot streak themselves and they've met? What is it in a kicker, in a place kicker, in somebody in that position that isn't as glamorized as the cornerback, the quarterback, and the wide receiver? And what is it in a kicker that has kind of puts that all together that makes this award so meaningful?
Yeah, I think there's a certain mentality that kickers have that often they only get in a game 3 or 4 times, perhaps, but it's crucial usually when they do get in, and people are counting on them. And sometimes you're made to feel like you're not part of a team. You're off maybe practicing by yourself and not knocking helmets with some of your teammates. But at the same time, they are counting on you to come through. So, the quarterback might throw a couple bad passes, a receiver might drop a ball, but they usually get another opportunity to come through for their team. Whereas kickers, it's all or nothing, and so there's a mindset, there's an appreciation, I think, for what we all do, and a willingness to give back to the community and let them know that we're grateful for this opportunity as well.
I think it's one of the coolest awards. And I think you being one of the faces, not only the namesake, but one of the faces, it's always been growing up for me, right? Watching the days of like CLTV or watching, Chicago Tribune Live. And then obviously everything through the normal channels. I knew come a certain time of year, especially the holiday season, that Fred is not just going to be talking about Cubs or Bears or Bulls. There's going to be the award talk. And it always made me really happy that we got to, for some reason, it was just this the love for it, right? To the appreciation for this award, and the people who won it had an appreciation for it. And I think that's always been something that has really been gravitational for it, that people kind of go towards it, is that. But, it's, you and I could talk about this all day, but Fred, there is so much that we got to talk about, and, everybody's going to be asking about it. So why don't we go into something? It's funny, right? How people always want to discredit the kickers, and yet the team we're about to talk about, the Chicago Bears, really could have used one a few years back. And, it would have been nice to have not had a double doink, and who knows what history would have been. It's interesting, right? People want to disrespect the kicker every once in a while until they need a kicker. So let's go and what's going on with the Chicago Bears. So obviously this huge game that's going to go on in Houston. You had a primetime matchup, CJ Stroud, Caleb Williams, a bunch of talent and wide receiver on both sides of the field. You have a lot of talent on defense on both sides of the field. And you have a lot of interesting storylines going into this game, this Sunday night. Before we actually get into what might happen on the field, what are your thoughts on the way Chicago, not just the organization, but just everybody, the fan base, the NFL, the Bears themselves, have handled the spotlight of the number one pick being Caleb Williams, it not being a question whether or not really, it should have been a question of who was the number one pick. This wasn't like it was with Deshaun and Mitch and Mahomes. There was a number one pick. What were your thoughts about everything heading into, before we even get to Houston, heading into that game against Tennessee?
Well, first of all, I think it was pretty much a consensus agreement that Caleb Williams was the number one pick. It should have been the number one pick. So I feel like the Bears didn't have the pressure of feeling like they were going out on a limb and going for Mitch Trubisky up high and that sort of thinking. So I think they had the agreement and backing of all people who follow the NFL. So that I think that was huge. It was kind of a no-brainer. The other thing that comes to my mind is, and I was saying this before last week's season opener, is that obviously there's so much attention on Caleb Williams and how he does and how he's going to direct the success or failure of the team. And to a large extent, that's true. But let's not forget so many aspects of the team that are so crucial to the team's success. And lo and behold, what happened? Caleb had a really so-so game in the opener, and yet the defense comes through big time and they get the takeaways. Special teams blocks a punt. These are truly important factors, and this is why football is the ultimate team sport. So there's not going to be just one guy who's going to dictate success or failure. Going back to my childhood, the Bears in the first round draft pick in 1965 had Gale Sayers and Dick Butkus, two Hall of Famers in the first round. They didn't win any championships, right? These are two of the greatest players on offense and defense in NFL history, and they alone were not enough to get a championship. So that sort of tells you that you've got to have some quality depth at all the positions. And when people ask me at the beginning of the season, who's going to win the division or who's going to what's the Bears' record going to be, and I always say, tell me who's going to get hurt first of all, right? And invariably with some team, whether it's Aaron Rodgers last year or this year Jordan Love with the Packers, early in the season they lose your starting quarterback for an entire season or a significant period of time. That's going to impact how things are going to happen. So football, more than perhaps any other sport, is dependent on the health, and it's just a sport where some key guys are going to get hurt. So as far as the Bears are concerned, things could line up well for them, but in most cases, to win a championship, everything has to line up pretty well in terms of injury success, in terms of winning some close games, things that can go one way or the other. And speaking of the kickers, we all know how many games in the NFL are determined by last second field goals. Quite a few, right? So these are all factors on top of having a quality quarterback like Caleb Williams.
And it's interesting that we are just so early in the season. We brought up Jordan Love. We brought up Aaron Rodgers from last season. I mean, we just saw what happened with Tua Tagovailoa. We have not seen the full fallout yet of what's happening at the end of week 2. And it's just the season really is done by quarters, like Lovie Smith used to do, where it's 4 games by 4 games by 4 games, because you do not know what's happening in September might be in November. And that's why it really is the week to week sport. You live and die week to week because it is that much of an emotional thing. And heading into Houston, heading into this game, what would you like to see besides a win? What do you want to see? I mean, everybody knows that this defense is going to perform, and they rally around Matt Eberflus, and he's been calling some good games recently. But what would you like to see offensively? Everybody would love to see 400 yards, but honestly, like realistically, what do you want to see from Caleb in week 2 on national television, Sunday Night Football, against a team and a contemporary and CJ Stroud that a lot of people believe are going to be with him if it all works out, if the NFL has its ways, 2 young quarterbacks for the future? What do you want to see on Sunday night?
Well, I would like to see the offensive coordinator really design a strategic plan that takes some of the pressure off of Caleb Williams. In other words, get that running game going, get a variety of plays going, and try to control time of possession, keep the ball away from CJ Stroud as much as possible. Get some sustained long drives. That to me is very important. They appear to have a really solid defense, and if you can keep them rested and off the field for a good period of time, they can be more effective as well. So I think I'm looking for a balance, and not necessarily a situation where Caleb Williams builds up his stats, right? That doesn't mean anything if you don't win the game. So obviously we want some improvement from him, but I think that'll come with a well-designed game plan. And obviously you want to protect the ball. You don't want a lot of fumbles and interceptions and that sort of thing. Try to maintain control of the game as best you can. against a really quality team in their stadium. And, here we've got the Bears in the national spotlight, and they've kind of been the laughing stock the past few years. Uh, so I think they could really send a good message to the rest of the league with a good performance.
It would be nice. It would be nice to surprise, even though people have the Bears at 10 wins, at the very least being competitive as a wild card, divisional contender. It'd be nice to be competitive and to, when you're actually not be just on Thursday night, but actually be on Sunday night or Monday night to perform in front of the country. It'd be a nice change of events for the Chicago Bears. And what a nice change of events here on the Sports Cubicle. Somebody here to class up the joint. He's been Chicago Tribune staple. He was doing it for 40 plus years. Indiana Football Hall of Fame. He's in the Gary Sports Hall of Fame. You can look at that amazing plaques in the back. My man's got it all set up right there. He's got an award named after him. It is the Fred Mitchell Award. Make sure you guys are checking it out at fredmitchellaward.com as well, always to keep up to date with everything that's going on there. But Fred, there is no way that here on the Sports Cubicle with me, Mike Mercado, we have a jam-packed show that I'm not going to have the great Fred Mitchell here and not talk about what the heck is going on the north and south side of Chicago in baseball. We can spend a second with the Cubs. I'm a Cub fan. I know how you feel about Cubbies. Well, we can talk about that, but the platform, I need to talk to you about the Sox. We have a lot of diehard Sox fans here on the station, heck, on this show, my co-host. What are your thoughts about the amount of baseball you've watched your entire life, the love that you have for baseball, to see what you have seen with this Chicago White Sox team? The floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to dress up, what we've seen, right? Put lipstick on a pig or whatever the phrase is. There's no denying what we've seen. It's not a fluke. It's not all due to injuries. Some of it is, but not certainly the majority of the losing. It's very sad, and I don't think anybody on the South Side expected the White Sox to be contenders this year, but nobody could have predicted the record-breaking losses that we're witnessing. And you just have to wonder what the impact is going to have on the franchise going forward. And we remember, before the season started, there was talk about the White Sox wanting to move and Jerry Reinsdorf wanting to move to another city or build a new stadium. And that was kind of a negative distraction, I thought, especially for Sox fans to hear this, feel like you're being jilted, so to speak. And then on top of that, to put a product out there on the field that is pretty embarrassing. And the thing about baseball, as we know, with so many games, you are what you are. I mean, it's not like football where you say, "Oh, we lost 3 or 4 key games," and could have been other way around. Here with 162 games and where they won 33 games, there's no denying what you see there. So many blown saves, so many miscues on the base paths and defensively, all the fundamentals that the White Sox claimed that they were going to try to clean up this year with the new general manager, Getz. And the fundamental baseball is not there. That's clear to see. And I wish I could say the future was bright, but I don't know how it could get any worse. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's a shame because it's a fan base that loves its team, that wants to love its team, and even being a Cub fan, there's nothing better than having 2 competitive baseball teams. And if nothing else, it gets us to September, it gets us to football. So to have a drag throughout the entire summer, it's not fair, and it's not fair to have ownership that demands so much from his fan base, expects so much from his fan bases on both the West Side and the South Side, and to never deliver on so many levels. It is a shame, and it's just something that I think they can do better, and they should be better. And we can't get better because Fred Mitchell can't be here every week. He can't join us on the Sports Cubicle. He can't be a permanent host. But Fred, before I let you go, are the Cubs going to make the playoffs? Yes or no?
If I'm putting money on it, I have to say no. I mean, it's just there would have to be an incredible set of circumstances for them to do that. And It's unfortunate that they put themselves in this position. Last year, they were in a much better position at the end and squandered it, right? Unbelievable how that happened. And that resulted in them switching managers. And the thinking was that a better manager would be able to harness that talent and get them going when it counted the most. But the odds are very much against them going here for the last couple of weeks of the season. Sorry.
I'm with you. It's put up or shut up next season. And I don't mean that for Craig Counsell. I think a lot of the players for the Cubs have stepped up. And I think there's been some really growth and improvement, including from PCA. And it comes down to Jed Hoyer and Carter Hawkins. And they have to step up and do their part. And so does the Ricketts family. They have to do their part for this. It's time. Money doesn't win you a championship, but it puts you in a position, in a better position. It makes patches and fixes that you can't just do with talent. And I think that's what's going to be most interesting heading into next season if they can't finish off this last month of September 8th. An impressive last few weeks, but just a little too short at the end of it. But Mr. Mitchell, I mean, I don't know what else to say. This has been an absolute pleasure. It has been an honor. Everybody knows if you're from Chicago, for all those who aren't from Chicago, we're talking about somebody 40 years plus at the Chicago Tribune. I mean, that in itself is impressive. But then you start adding, the Indiana Football Hall of Fame. Think about the players that have played in Indiana. Stop there. Then you think about the Gary Sports Hall of Fame. You think about the people that come out of there, right? And then on top of it all, he gets an award named after him. That's right. And not just any award. We're talking about an award, people. So this has been an absolute pleasure. He is the one and only Fred Mitchell. Fred, any final words for your people, your kingdom here in Chicago?
Oh, well, I've been blessed to be here in a city that's so passionate about its sports. I feel like I was part of a sort of a golden era of sports newspapers in the 80s and 90s in particular. And I feel very blessed to have had that opportunity. I teach now at DePaul University, a sports journalism class, and there's so many wonderful stories to share with them. And it helps them, hopefully, and it helps me to recall some of the people I've met and places I've been and games I've covered. So I'm just so grateful to have had this opportunity.
Hey, in my household here in the Mercado household, we love us some DePaul. My wife graduated from DePaul. She has a bachelor's of arts from there. She's also getting her master's and PhD at UIC and all these different places. But we love us some DePaul here. So we got nothing but love for Professor Fred Mitchell. Fred, you're the best, sir. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Sports Cubicle.
All right. Good to see you anytime.
Great to see you, my friend. We got a whole lot left here on this edition of the Sports Cubicle on WCPT 820 AM, HeartlandSignal.com. I'm your host, Mike Mercado.